We are getting ever so close to the start of the Nebraska football season, and in today's video, it's time. I'm going to be going over my official 2024 Husker football game-by-game predictions, and we're going to see what record the Huskers have, wins, losses, and every prediction you could imagine. So before we dive into it, make sure to smash that like button. Put a lot of work into this video, a lot of graphics you're about to see. So please hit that like button. And hey, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. I post a video about Nebraska football and Nebraska recruiting every single day. So if you're a diehard fan of this program and you want daily content every single day this fall talking about your favorite team, please hit that subscribe button. It would help me out greatly. But without further ado, let's get into it with my predictions for Nebraska football's 2024 record. Started off with week 1 at Memorial Stadium. Dylan Raiola's debut, and this is versus the UTEP Miners, a struggling Group of 5 program. Now, they're led by their brand new head coach, Scotty Waldron. Of course, last year the Miners went 3-9. Of course, you see there on the screen their statistics on offense and defense, bottom of Group of 5 football, period. So they're completely rebuilding UTEP, not too formidable. Now, there's only one player I'd watch out for on their roster, and this is on their defensive line. Maurice Westermoreland had 7.5 sacks last year for the Miners. He was a presence, and honestly, I was surprised that he kept his commitment to the Miners instead of going to the transfer portal. So the Huskers got to shut him down, but you look at the rest of the roster for them, not very good. It should be noted, this is the first time Nebraska has started off their season with a non-Power 5 opponent since 2019. They have played a Power 5 opponent in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 to start off their year. And finally, we get a layup game. Vegas has the Huskers as a 27.5 point favorite. They couldn't agree more, and for that reason, the Huskers get it done. First week of the year, 45-6 against UTEP, and they are undefeated going into the second week of the season, arguably the most hyped up game on the schedule for Nebraska. The Colorado Buffaloes come to town, led by Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and Colorado beat Nebraska last year in Boulder. I feel like the score looks a lot more of a blowout than it actually was, but Colorado did beat Nebraska handedly, and Matt Rhule is trying to get revenge here at his home turf. So as of right now, Nebraska is about a touchdown favorite. Of course, Colorado, they have a lot of talent on the roster. You could say a lot of things about them. It's not a talent problem. They went 4-8. They had a middle of the pack offense, one of the worst defenses in Power 5. But looking at their roster a little bit more, give respect to Shedeur Sanders. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback in college football this year. No question about it. He's going to be an NFL draft pick in the spring. And one thing that scares me about Colorado is their wide receiver core, of course, led by Travis Hunter. He's also going to be a first-round draft pick this spring. But they also have LeJontay Wester, Jimmy Horn, Will Shepard. All of those guys have had very productive careers. They have a top 10 receiver core in all of college football. And honestly, that might be a little bit of a concern for Nebraska because we don't feel too confident about our cornerback room. It's been hit by the injury bug already. So for that reason, I am a little bit concerned about this game, but you look at the offensive line for Colorado, it's not very good, and Nebraska has one of the best D-lines in the country. You got to expose that unit. You got to expose their defense, and I think it's going to be all the difference that Nebraska is playing this at home this year under the lights of Memorial Stadium with 90,000 cheering for the Big Red. Man, it's going to be a huge game. Dylan Rhule is going to show out. First real game of his career, let's be honest, and for that reason, Nebraska wins on national television 28-20. Again, it's going to be a close ball game. I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska doesn't pull away until the very end, but I do believe the Huskers will get revenge on Colorado. And honestly, man, I think this should be a yearly series. I hate Colorado. I want to play them every year to beat them every year. We need something like that, either against Colorado or Oklahoma, but Oklahoma would never do it. So hopefully we can set some up with Colorado in the near future. But we'll play them again in about a decade, but the Huskers get the last laugh. Now let's go to week 3, another layup team here, Northern Iowa out of the FCS. Now, let's say what you want about Northern Iowa, but they have been very productive when it comes to churning out NFL talent and being competitive in that level of football. Of course, last year they only went 6-5, but they've been in the mix for national titles time and time again. And there's a lot of pros that come from that program. Last year, they averaged about 26 points per game and gave up about 26 points per game as well. So, again, pretty much a balanced team. Nothing crazy there. Nebraska, there's not a line necessarily out yet, but I put it at about 37.5, what you can estimate. And, yeah, Nebraska will take care of business against Northern Iowa. No problem. 42-3, just barely covers that spread. And, man, you're looking at a 3-0 Nebraska team. That feels very good going into conference play. Now, things are starting to heat up now against Illinois. So the Huskers host the Illini Friday night for the 400th straight sellout at Memorial Stadium. And I don't know about you, but Illinois is always a team that scares me, specifically because of their head coach, Bret Bielema. Now, it feels like just yesterday that Bret Bielema had his first game with Illinois, and he beat Nebraska at Champaign. Now, of course, he's been hit by hard times over the last couple of years. Nebraska went back to Champaign last year and handled them pretty easily. But you look at their record, they were 5-7, their offensive points per game and defensive points per game, bottom of Power 5, not very good there. But this is an improved team for Illinois. Now, looking at the roster, they have a very experienced secondary at the cornerback spot, at the safety spot. And for that reason, if you really want to beat Illinois this year, you got to run it down their throat. Same thing that you did last year. So a guy like Emmett Johnson has to have a big game, Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson, and the offensive line has to show up for the Huskers. But I feel like this is a game that Nebraska will easily win, again, with all the expectations, the Friday night game at Memorial. About a 10-point favorite, according to my estimation, and they're going to cover that spread and win 31-17 and move to 4-0 on the year. Now, a road test against the Purdue Boilermakers up next. I'm going to put that at about a 12.5 spread. That's what I estimate it'll be around. But honestly, Purdue is another team that scares me. Ryan Walters going into his second year, and he did struggle with the Boilermakers. Went 4-8 in 2023. Not a good offense, not a good defense. But Ryan Walters, he's a very defensive-minded head coach. He churned out a bunch of talent within 1 year at Purdue, and I honestly expect him to do it again. Looking at their defense, they're very similar to Illinois, where they have a very experienced secondary, but their defensive line is not very good on both sides of the ball. So for that reason, Nebraska once again run the ball down their throats. And it should be noted, the Huskers have struggled in West Lafayette time and time again. They really struggle to win there. Hopefully they find a way to beat Purdue, and I think they will. No problem about it. 27-24, close ball game because of Nebraska's struggles in West Lafayette. Again, I just don't understand how the Huskers always have a hard time there, but they're going to just find a way to win this ball game. It's not going to be pretty. Dylan Raiola might throw a couple picks against a good Purdue secondary, but the Huskers will get it done and avoid the trap game on the road. Now let's get to arguably the hardest game so far on Nebraska's schedule. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights come to town in Week 6, led by, of course, Greg Schiano, one of my favorite coaches in all of college football. I think he's completely underrated. And Rutgers, you can tell if somebody is a casual college football fan by the way they talk about Rutgers. Too many people think Rutgers is, a 2-3 win program still. Rutgers has made a bowl game the last 3-4 years. They are very competitive. Now, last year, they went 7-6. Their offense was one of the worst in Power 5 football, but you look at that defense, very formidable for the Scarlet Knights. Now, I think Nebraska will be about a 10-point favorite going to this matchup, just given the fact that they're going to be 5-0 and they're rolling. But Rutgers has a couple players you have to watch out for. First off, their defense is just getting better. They return a lot of guys from last year. I expect them to have basically a top 20 defense in 2024. Not only that, but they're led by a senior running back, Kyle Montagai, who had 1,200 yards last year and 8 touchdowns, averaging 5 yards a carry. I mean, he's one of the best running backs in the country, period. Nebraska has to shut him down. But as for the passing attack for Rutgers, not much there. So for that reason, I think the defense thrives. It's going to be a low-scoring ball game from Rutgers' standpoint. But the Huskers actually lose this one 17-23. Now listen, the reason why I think the Huskers lose is simply because Rutgers defense, very talented. Dylan Raiola is going to have one game where he struggles mightily, he throws a pick or two, and the offense just can't figure something out, right? That's just going to happen. That happens with freshman quarterbacks. Rutgers, this is a trap game time and time again. They're led by Kaliak Manis, the past quarterback at Minnesota, and they get it done. A little bit of a low-scoring game, like I mentioned, but they just do enough, led by their senior running back, and Nebraska falls to 5-1. All right, 5-1 record for the Huskers going into the bye week. They don't have a great taste in their mouth, and now they go to Indiana to play a struggling Hoosiers team with a brand new head coach. One of the worst offenses and defenses in all of football last year. Nebraska still going to be a heavy favorite in this one. Now, looking at Indiana, one thing that I do like about them, I love their head coach, Kurt Kignetti, coming in from James Madison, and they have a good passing attack. Curtis Roy transferred in from Ohio. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the MAC over the last couple years. Elijah Sarrett transfers in from James Madison, had 1,200 yards last year for the Dukes, and then Donovan McCauley, another wide receiver, had 700 yards for the Hoosiers. So they have a formidable passing attack, but their defense, man, awful. The running attack is awful. Nebraska, they're not happy after losing to Rutgers, and they get it done in just dominant fashion, 45-17, and move to 6-1. And there you go. A bowl game is clinched for the Huskers. For the first time since 2016, Nebraska will make a postseason appearance. But let's take it to the next week. Week 9, we take a trip to Columbus to play the Ohio State Buckeyes. Yeah, you look at the odds estimation, about a 17-point favorite for Ohio State. They had the second best defense in all of football last year. Very formidable offense. Man, Ohio State, they are a tough team. This is the most talented they've been since Urban Meyer left. The best running back core in the country, led by Judkins and Travion Henderson. Of course, a very deep quarterback room led by Will Howard. They also have 5-star Julian Sayin in there, 5-star Air Noland in there. And then they have the best wide receiver room in all of college football. So this is a loss for Nebraska. I'm not really going to try to spin it. I don't even think it's very competitive, unfortunately. Nebraska loses 13-34. Now, if this game was in Memorial Stadium, I do believe it would be a little more slanted toward Nebraska. But this is the best Ohio State team in years. They're going to be a real threat to win the national title. Nebraska's just not there yet, and for that reason, we drop this game. Let's take it to the next week. We go back home to play the UCLA Bruins, led by a brand new head coach, Deshaun Foster. And honestly, UCLA is a team that I think has been disrespected time and time again this offseason. They went 8-5 last year with Chip Kelly and had one of the best defenses in college football. People forget that about them. Now, their offense was not very good, however, but that defense is only going to be better this year. They return a lot of guys, and they do have a couple transfers coming in. Michael Sturdivant had about 1,300 yards in his career at California. He's a stud. I've been watching him for the last 2 seasons. And Ethan Garbers is a pretty formidable quarterback as well for UCLA. Now, I think Nebraska is going to be about a 5.5 favorite going into this one. However, it's another trap game. Nebraska falls to UCLA in a classic 27-28, 6-3 record. And yeah, just a surprising loss for the Huskers. You'd think they'd bounce back coming off of Ohio State, but it's very hard to come out of a game from Columbus on the other side the very next week. So Nebraska loses 2 straight, Ohio State, now UCLA. And you go into a bye week with 2 straight losses, 6-3, still not terrible, with 3 more games on your schedule. Now, let's take it over to USC. Nebraska makes a trip over to the Coliseum to face Lincoln Riley's squad coming off of an 8-5 season. Now, say what you want about USC, one of the best offenses in college football, one of the worst defenses in college football. Now, my main concern about this game for the Huskers is you cannot get in a shootout with USC, because if you get in a shootout, you will lose every single day of the week. No questions asked. You've got to have a good game defensively, shut down their quarterback play, shut down their passing attack. Really, that's the main thing that I'm going to be worried about. But we'll say what you want about their defense. It's going to be a little bit improved this year. They have a brand new defensive coordinator. They have a lot of talent, very similar to the way Nebraska has been in the past. Talent's not an issue. It's just a lot of coaching errors and honestly execution. But you know what? Nebraska's coming off of a bye week. They're rested up. Matt Rhule gets a statement win at USC. He wins 38-31. The offense shows up, and the defense does just enough to slow down that passing attack. And Nebraska pulls off the upset and moves to 7-3 on the year. Now, we go back to Memorial Stadium to face a familiar foe, the Wisconsin Badgers, led by Luke Fickell in his second year. Now, Wisconsin struggled mightily last year. People forget this as well. They only went 7-6, had one of the worst offenses in all of football. Now, their defense, top 20 like usual. But I will say this about Wisconsin. Going to their defense, they have an elite secondary. They have an elite offensive line. And honestly, going back to that offense, Ches Malusi's back, who's been with them for the last couple years in the backfield. And one guy that scares me, Will Pauling, their wide receiver, he ripped Nebraska to shreds last year, had 80 yards in the air. He's a bona fide stud, and he's only going to be better. So I am worried about him. And honestly, one thing that I just hate about Wisconsin, they're our kryptonite. We haven't beat them in a decade plus, since 2012. And unfortunately, Luke Fickell, I believe he's a great head coach. I believe he's a great game manager head coach. And I do believe Wisconsin is just a little bit more talented than we are. That streak of 12 years does not end in 2024. We lose a close one at Memorial Stadium, 20-24, and move to 7-4 on the year. Well, it all goes down to one game for Nebraska. The Huskers take a trip to Kinnick Stadium to play their biggest rival, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Of course, Kirk Ferentz now in his 26th year with that program, and very similar to Wisconsin. One of the best defenses in all college football. They were ranked 4th last year. The worst offense in all of the land. Only averaged 15 points last year. I mean, not much to look at. Now, this is a defense for Iowa. It was amazing last year. It's going to be even better this year. It's hard to even imagine. Their secondary is best in college football, period. They're led by Jay Higgins, Sebastian Castro, 5-star Xavier Nwankpa, Quinn Schulte. So very good secondary for Iowa. Now, one thing that's interesting about them, their defensive line is not as good. Usually we think of Iowa, we think of the opposite, that their D-line is just incredible. Their secondary has a little bit of flaws. That's not the case here. Their D-line is not very good. You can exploit that a little bit, running the ball down their throat. Now, looking at their offense, it's bad. It's bad, guys. I mean, they have a brand new OC in Tim Lester. I don't imagine he'll change up too many things to their scheme. Their running back is LaShawn Williams, who about 800 yards last year. Again, he's nothing to write home about. Cade McNamara, nothing to write home about. I can't believe he's still playing college football. And their offensive line is not as good as it used to be. Not really a top 5 unit in the Big Ten. So for that reason, Nebraska rolls into Kinnick Stadium. They've played well there over the last couple of years, despite a couple losses. They won there, of course, in 2022. I expect us to be about a 3-point favorite. We're usually favored against Iowa, which is odd. And Nebraska gets it done. We finally beat Iowa once again, 27-20, and we end off the regular season 8-4. So, yep, 8-4 record for Nebraska. We will be going bowling. You're going to take this. You're going to take that record every single day of the week. Again, this is just a step for the program, right? I'm not going to sit here and say we're winning 10, 11 games. That's ridiculous. This is a talented team. This is a great defense. Do not get me wrong for the Huskers. However, Matt Rhule said it best. He wants to take a big step this year, but the biggest step is going to be from year 2 to year 3, and that's when you can expect the Huskers to be in the mix for the college football playoff, be in the mix for the Big Ten title. Now, 8-4 will get you bowling, so I have a little bit of an extra thing for the Huskers. I believe we will be playing in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida, against our old Big 12 foe, the Missouri Tigers, led by Elijah Drinkwitz. Now, last year, Missouri was really good. I mean, they went 11-2. I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back, win about 9-8 games this year. But very good offense over there. Their defense won't be as good as it was. And I'm going to say we're a 6-point favorite going into that one. And for that reason, a lot of the good players from Missouri, like a Luther Burden, like a Brady Cook perhaps, like a Theo Weiss, they might opt out of this one going to the NFL. Nebraska will not have many opt-outs. And the Huskers win a bowl game, 31-23 to end off their year 9-4. And again, you will take this every single day of the week. And I'm going to tell you this. If you can win 9 games this year and you win a bowl game, you're going to be in the mix for a lot of 4-star, 5-star prospects. You're going to start landing them. Absolutely, you will start landing them. The NIL will increase. You're going to start to have more money to spend. The fan base is going to be riled up going into next year. Dylan Raiola is going to be one of the best returning quarterbacks in college football, and I can't wait. Now, 9-4, my prediction for Nebraska. Let me know down below. What is your prediction? Do you disagree with me on a pick? Do you think we win a game that I said we lose? Do you think we lose a game that I think we'll win? Let me know in the comment section your picks. And hey, if you made this far in the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. I put a lot of work over the last couple weeks making these graphics, making my deep dive graphics. If you didn't see that video, link is down below. So make sure to check that out. But again, please hit that like button and subscribe. It's going to help me out a lot. But that'll do it for me here in the Williston Sports Channel. As always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.